This is Leaders in the Trenches, and your host today is Gene Hammett.
Hi, my name is Gene Hammett. This is Leaders in the Trenches. My big question for you today is, do you have a shared vision that everyone in the company has bought into? Well, when I talk about a shared vision, it really is about people aligning together, making sure that everyone's there for a purpose and that they know what that purpose is because you've articulated very well and they have bought in to what you're doing as a company. They know their role within that. Well, that's what we're talking about today. We have Steve Wiggins. He is the chairman of Remedy Partners. Remedy Partners is a specialty company in the world of healthcare. They do bundled payments. We talk about what that means inside here, but what you really want to know is the importance of a shared vision and why to do that as a leader and what you can do specifically to make sure that everyone aligns around that together. We talk about some of the things you do over 60 days. It really does make a difference in growing your company. So that is my interview with Steve Wiggins, and here is that conversation. Hi, Steve. How are you?
Good, Gene. How are you?
I'm glad to have you here at Leaders in the Trenches, and I'm glad you got my name right this time. I've already introduced you to our audience through the introduction, but I'd love for them to hear it from you. So tell us about you and who you serve.
Well, Steve Wiggins, and I'll get your name right because my father raised me to always believe that everybody's favorite word is their name. So you got to get that right. And I've been in healthcare. I've been building healthcare companies since 1977. And so I've been at it a long time. My first business was a nonprofit organization. And from then I've built 7 companies that I personally built and started. And the current one, Remedy Partners, is in the same vein of a lot of the other businesses. The businesses were mostly around healthcare, how you pay for it, how you make it more efficient, how you make it more responsive, how you get people better, faster, how you keep them out of hospitals and keep them living their life. And so Remedy is in that same field.
Well, I want to dive into that because, healthcare and whatnot is a big topic in our society, and many business owners are struggling with what's the right healthcare for their families, their workers and whatnot. Tell us specifically around where you see healthcare going right now.
Well, we're going to have to do something. There's a lot of views, and when you move into that question, the answer is always full of the opinion of who's ever answering the question. And so, but generally speaking, the problems that we face don't have a political viewpoint. The problems are that we don't have enough money for guys like you. There's not going to be a Medicare trust fund that's solvent unless we do something about it. For most employers, healthcare is eating up a bigger share of their revenue than they really want to spend. For most consumers, healthcare is complicated. When they think about it, it's a Chinese menu. They get the bills in the mail. They don't know who did it. Why should it cost so much? It lacks all of the transparency that we'd like to see in how we buy things. And most importantly, we're losing the worldwide global race to be a healthy country. We lag in so many measures of health outcome. And so healthcare has a lot of issues. And what Remedy does is has a unique place in helping a lot of the parties to solve each one of those challenges that I just mentioned.
Hi there, this is Gene. I'm the host of Leaders in the Trenches. I wanted to give you a free gift. I've been working with Audible for almost a year now because my book published last year, and I've been listening to Audible books for probably 3 or 4 years. I really love it, and I wanted to give you a free gift. If you want a 30-day free trial of Audible, all you have to do is go to audibletrial.com/Leaders in the Trenches. That will give you access to any book you want. You don't have to buy The Trap of Success, which is my book. You can buy any book you want. So if there's something you've been wanting to read, just don't have time, make sure you go to audibletrial.com/Leaders in the Trenches. All right, back to the interview. Well, you said that since you started this in 2011 as an idea, 2012 was official launch. If do I have those dates right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That you've grown really fast because of the innovation that you've brought to the marketplace. Like, can you share with us what you mean by the innovation?
Well, in healthcare, generally, payments have always been made on a fee-for-service basis. So what happens is you go to the doctor and there's a bill that comes and it might have 10 different items that you're being billed for. Then you go have surgery and there might be another 50 items that are billed for. In the recovery, there might be another 100 things that you're paying for. Each of them come in, you pay some share, you don't know, it's confusing. And what bundled payments are, which is the field that Remedy's in, is it's a payment mechanism that essentially takes all that and creates one price, offers that price to the insurance company and to the consumer, and the provider teams that you create to do a hip replacement or to do a normal delivery of a baby or to do whatever the procedure or condition is. Sorry about that. We'll get rid of that. To do whatever is involved, a bundle payment is essentially one price for everything. And it covers what's called an episode of care. And so what Remedy does is all of the difficult math, all of the difficult contracting, all of the difficult user interface software, whether it's with the physicians, the hospitals, or the patients. We're the logistics people that make a very complicated system easy for somebody like you or for an employer. And the net result is we generally can lower spending on the same services that you'd get any other way. By having teams accept a bundled payment, we can lower the cost anywhere from 10 to 25%.
Well, that's pretty good to have it cheaper. So that's a good innovation. And what's one of the challenges you guys have had to overcome in the last few years as you're growing fast?
Well, there's a lot of competing ideas for how you should control healthcare costs. And we live in a time where hospitals are buying their competitors and they're also buying the physician groups that are historically serving the patients in their community. And so you're getting significant hegemony in a market where one provider may control a significant share of the overall healthcare market. And so sometimes change, particularly something like what we're doing, which creates a lot of transparency and people can see into what things cost. If you're the dominant player, you don't like it. And if you're the insurance company that's been growing by leaps and bounds, and you actually make more money as costs go up because you have more premium dollars that are being managed, you don't have quite the sense of urgency as the small businessman who is struggling to make payroll and to get his revenues in line, his expenses in line with his revenues. And what we do is we create a path for employers and insurers and the government to save a lot of money, but we're going up against very strong interests that would rather not change, and they have often a different view of how you should change.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us. I want to go back to some of the notes I had in preparing for this interview, Steve. You talked about, having a tribe of employees and a shared vision. How did you come up with a shared vision?
Well, if you're building an organization, you better start with one yourself. And you better have some belief. And you better have a pretty clear idea of how to articulate that. Because particularly in this day and age, more and more people want to be involved in something that makes a difference. So we have the good fortune of being involved with something that makes a huge difference. We're saving Medicare right now over $200 million a year. And so that's making a difference. We make healthcare easier to understand for patients who are going through a difficult hospitalization. That's something to feel good about and make a difference. You're making a difference. And it's easy to create culture and to have a tribe when you're doing something meaningful. And so in our case, it's a little easier than in some others. If I was selling tires or something, it might be a little more difficult unless I had a distinct advantage. But in healthcare, we have the benefit of being able to attract software engineers and data analysts, which are the two biggest job categories for us, because they're doing something that's going to make the health system better, and they see that and they appreciate that. And in building a tribe, it starts with clarity, honesty. You have to tell people exactly what you're doing. You have to be consistent. Nobody wants to work in an organization where they don't have trust in the leaders. You have to be able to articulate that vision clearly to everybody that is involved. You have to be able to stick to it. And I think you have to be willing also to follow your instincts and your gut. And you need enough people around you that ideally know you, trust you, so you're not starting from scratch. I have no problem bringing family members into the company. Never have. I have no problem bringing friends into the company. I never have. I've been able to sustain the friendships and not disrupt any family dynamics because I want people to feel like it's a real tribe where you're part of something. You're part of a broad family, and I think we're accomplishing that at Remedy. We still have a ways to go, but I think it's a big part of our success.
I want to single out that shared vision part because most business owners have a vision for themselves. What do you mean by shared?
Well, you have to, in general, we try to put everything we do into the language of why it matters. And so in our case, we think it's important to organize healthcare around a patient episode. And we think that it's important to do that because we believe that if you organize healthcare and pay for healthcare around the episode, the providers will be more cooperative with one another. Patients will know ahead of time what something's going to cost. There's going to be more transparency on what the outcomes are likely to be, and the patient will have a more connected experience to everybody that they're involved with. And so when you begin with the why and what's the net outcome of what you're doing, and then you piece together the component architecture of how we're getting there, it's up to anybody that looks at us to say, I'm in or I'm not. And in our case, it's pretty easy. We are the people that enable an insurance company, we enable a physician group, we enable a hospital to operate with bundle payments, and then we enable a small employer to be able to buy an insurance product that encourages his employees to use more efficient teams of providers that accept this fixed price. And so we're lucky. We are in a space that is huge. We're in the biggest industry in the world, and we could potentially capture hundreds of billions into this payment model. We've already captured just under 10 billion of spending in just our program. And so, and what we do applies globally. It's not just in the US. And so, it's a little, like I say, it's a little easier to get people to believe in a vision when it makes a lot of sense and it's not a vision that's involved in just making money. That's a byproduct for the people involved.
I want to ask you a question because a lot of people have a vision and somewhere it gets derailed because they get focused on how and maybe the people lose track of it. Is there anything you've learned in your journey of keeping people aligned with the vision as the company continues to move forward?
Well, first of all, I'm a big believer that if you're not a writer, become a writer. If you're not a good speaker, become a good speaker. And if you're not a great speaker, just get comfortable being exactly who you are and making sure that you communicate. A second thing I'm a real believer in is some organizational framework that allows everybody to know what their part is in the broader play. And we use OKRs, objectives and key results. You can Google it. It's a well-known approach to agile planning that allows you to modify. But what OKRs allow the leader to do is always be zoned in on, is this organization headed down the path that where we'd like to see it go? And if the leader doesn't have the answer, doesn't know that, then you got the wrong leader. And probably if you could ever know that about a company, you'd want to short it or get out of it or compete against it. But I'm a big believer that objectives and key results, where you say to somebody, what do you think are the 5 things that are most important that you can do for the company in the next 60 days? And don't tie it to pay. And if the person comes up with 7 of them, you take it down to 5. And then from those 5, you try to take it down to 3. And you say, those 3 matter the most. And if at the end of 60 days, they've accomplished 2 of the 3, great. Because what doesn't happen now in particular, because of the distractions of our day, is that sometimes people don't get 2 important things done in 60 days. And so if the leader can always use OKRs or some tool like that to pull everybody back on track, and think of that as the most important work that they do, I've run a Fortune 300 company that way, that I built from scratch. And I just made sure that I knew at the highest level what the goals were, and I knew exactly what the OKRs were for my second tier people. And they were responsible for taking all that down through the organization. And when you do that, when you have that alignment, and it's agile because you're shifting it every 60 days, beautiful things can happen.
I was going to ask you, is there some magic to the 60-day time frame for you?
I don't believe in like annual goals and that sort of thing, because people can hide behind them, and it's not reflective of the dynamic nature of how organizational life works and how organizations themselves evolve and grow. Because when you're growing, you really never know what the problems are that are going to come at you, and you might have to change. What is one thing might be a real important priority, but the government changes a regulation, or a competitor comes out with some new way of doing something. And if you don't have an agile planning process and an agile execution process that allows you to shift in real time, you're going to struggle to keep up.
When you talk about tribes, you had shared with us some ways that people align around vision, but is there anything specific to make sure the tribe stays engaged with the work that they're doing?
It's a really good question, and I don't think that there's a silver bullet. I just don't. I think the way this really works is you have to stay on top of it. There's asymmetric warfare is a concept in international terrorism that applies to companies now as well. And, you can have one disgruntled person who goes on any one of the websites that could take down a CEO, and they lob something in. And so you have to be able to take all that on also, because your vision anymore, in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, in the early 2000s, it was a different challenge. It was, quite frankly, easier to keep an organization going in one direction. Now, with so many people that have so many competing views and so many different views, as you know, because you're in the business, we have people that maintain a significant social media presence, but at the same time, we have a digital presence team that's watching exactly what's going on in LinkedIn, exactly what's going on all the websites that could affect us. And we're also putting things out, mostly in healthcare policy, so that the government knows what we're thinking at all time, because in our case, the government policy is very important. And if we don't also have as part of our strategy moving policy, we'll fail.
I want to be able to bring this home with innovation. Like, I don't know what you've learned in your years of decades of working in healthcare, but you've got to continuously innovate, and you've got to get people to bring fresh ideas and have the courage to make those things happen. How are you doing that on a regular basis, Steve?
Well, right now I'm the chairman. I'm the executive chairman, and I do a lot of sales calls, and I go out right now. And so the next 3 business trips for me are sales calls and meeting with customers each, because our customers are all over the country. We've got hundreds of hospital systems and hospitals and physician groups and organizations and some big insurance companies around the country. And I like to get in front of them. I also like to hear from our field organization what's working and what isn't working, because I think Steve Jobs had it right. And that's that you can't delegate innovation very successfully. Someone who has a connection to all parts of the puzzle in complicated businesses in particular has to take a personal interest in defining. If you're building software, you have to define use cases. You have to write the functional specs yourself. You have to be engaged with the people doing that. And then you have to monitor the progress to make sure that the knowledge people that know about it are transferring those insights to the engineer, the software people, or the analytics people. In our case, I'll write a report like I would like to see it. And it's interesting how often it becomes part of our armamentarium of the analytics packages that we're delivering to our customers. And at the same time, I feel that way about presentations. People tend to reuse in an organization whatever's available as a PowerPoint, let's say. And I'm a big believer that in the idea world, as the leader, you have to create those yourself, and you have to learn to use those tools, and don't delegate that. I don't care how high up you are. I have so many friends that run big organizations, and I say to them, how can you not know how to use some of these software tools? Are you just relying on somebody to do this for you all the time? And I think that's a mistake. I think you have to go hands-on. And I find that if I build a deck for a presentation that I make, I'll go to one of our big employee gatherings, and I'll see 15 of my slides show up in other people's decks. And I realize some of that's innovation too. It's innovation in how you're characterizing complex subjects and communicating them in images and words.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important. You just have to be engaged. And when you get to the point where you think, I just can't do this anymore, then you have to start the delicate process of turning it over to somebody who will.
Steve, I appreciate you being here. I'd love for you to take a chance to tell the audience where they could find out more about Remedy Partners and what you guys got coming up next.
Good. Well, Remedy is based in Norwalk, Connecticut, and New York City, and you can find us on the internet at remedypartners.com.
All right. Well, that wraps up this episode with Steve. I really appreciate the insight around shared vision and tribes and how to continuously innovate and how you want to be hands-on. Those goes back to, this is all about leaders in the trenches. So thanks for being here, Steve.
Good job. Good luck with your podcast.
Wow, what a great interview. There's so many similarities between fast-growing companies because they know what works. And if your company's not growing, you probably haven't tuned in to the fast growth drivers, which I have talked about, over and over and over on these podcasts. So if you have any questions about where your company is going next, you have a challenge that you want to ask me about, then make sure you reach out to Gene@GeneHammett.com. I'll be happy to engage with you. Maybe I've got free content that could just answer that question. So make sure you reach out to Gene@GeneHammett.com. As always, lead with courage. I'll see you next time.